Yeah, I think it's live now. Mustafa, can you check? I think I can see it in the Facebook.
Notification to cultural chat item is live.
I think we can wait for just 5 minutes, then I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Sarmishta, I think Atul Tiwari sir also joined us in this room. Screenwriter Atul Tiwari sir.
Okay.
Yeah, Mustafa, he actually called Mustafa and got interested to hear from ma'am and have interaction with you people. So we are having him also. He just joined right now.
Okay.
Great.
Mustafa, is sir in already?
Yeah, he's in.
Okay, then I think after 2 minutes we can test at 6:05.
Notification to cultural chat item is live.
वर्कशॉप होने वाला है मुझे बेटा मेरा तार निकाल के दे दो जरा मैं वहीं बैठ जाऊं जरा गर्मी में ही
And also
yeah,
also maybe one of you need to have everybody
unmute.
muted except the speaker,
Mustafa.
so that you have to be careful about that.
मेरा हेडफोन उठा दो बेटा वो रखा है सामने देखो पर्स के बगल में
Just checking that you can still hear me though, yeah? Okay, great.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Okay.
Hello, Sarmishta?
Yeah.
Yeah, we think we can start now. Ma'am, if you're ready, then we'll start.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, then.
Yeah, almost 50 people have already joined. I mean, they're watching it live.
Yeah,
Other
I'm
will
sure
join
people
soon.
will join us soon. Yeah. Maybe we can start. Erin? Yeah?
Yes,
sure.
ready?
Okay, so first of all, good evening, everyone, and good evening, Erin. I think good morning is where you are,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So thank you for joining us. We're really glad to have you on the platform of IIT Bombay. Some of us who are more in the scholarly field of theatre, we know of you because of a book that you had written. In fact, one book that immediately rings a bell with me the moment I hear your name is Theatre of Roots. Okay, so that's how many of us know of you and much of your work through the interest that you've had in Russet theatre, for example. So we would like to know about that. But to the audience, just to introduce her a little bit, she is a faculty at New York University at the Tisch School, and is also the artistic director of the theatre company called This Is Not a Theatre Company. She has directed several plays, and she's actually collaborated also with a theatre company in India called Shopanam. Of her work, she's of course played in several theaters across the world. And of her work, one form of work, I think I'll get back to you about that, are the pod plays, which I found extremely interesting. And maybe you'll tell us a little bit about that. But maybe we already begin with your presentation today.
Great. Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I wish I could be there in person, but this is the next best thing. So thank you. So let's see. I do also want to say I'm not specifically speaking about rasa today, but I think that is embedded in this presentation. And so at the end, perhaps we can have a little conversation about how rasa might actually be present in these online productions.
Right.
So COVID is actually creating an exciting new performance environment in which none of the old rules apply, and artists around the globe are creating and embracing new modes of performance on platforms that come with their own specifications, creating new dramaturgical structures and what often feel like new modes of engagement and interaction. Counterintuitively, while COVID has hampered togetherness and travel IRL in real life, some of these performances have brought artists and audiences from numerous nations together URL and have created new possibilities for collaboration. So I want to just say that before the pandemic, there was already quite a bit of performance online. The middle in this slide, the middle production, Oedipus Rex, took place on what is called the Avatar Repertory Theater in Second Life. And their mission is to challenge barriers and explore art, theater, and stagecraft in immersive user-created virtual worlds. Actors, directors, designers, playwrights, and producers are connected around the globe, creating live stage performances in real time to be enjoyed by an international audience. So performances are enjoyed online in the privacy of your own home. Second Life is a multi-user kind of online world. It's less popular now than it was years ago, but the ART, the Avatar Repertory Theater, has presented Two Gentlemen of Verona, Oedipus Rex, and The Learned Ladies, among a number of other classics. And in order to see these productions, you just create an account and an avatar in Second Life and go into their online theater space. I would say that this doesn't really reimagine theater so much as present theater in a very conventional way, but in a virtual space. Graduate students at NYU's Tisch ITP, Interactive Telecommunications Program, are creating a new virtual world for social interaction and performance of all kinds, from formal theater to performances of self and online life. It's called Yorb, and it actually is continuing to grow as more people use it. And there's been an uptick in both use and their programming since COVID began. So this is ART's, this is ART's Oedipus. Sorry, and just to say that you can see that this is a kind of online virtual character, right? Not played by an actual human being, but by a computer program. This is are some images from a Twitter play called The 15th Line. In 2010, Jeremy Gable wrote a 4-character play for Twitter called The 15th Line, which is structured as a series of over 300 interrelated tweets between 4 characters over a period of 8 weeks. Readers follow the 4 characters, reading the characters' tweets as and when they come up in their feed. So the dialogue of and between fictional characters is interspersed with unrelated tweets sent by sent by real people, creating what I think is a fascinating mix of the real and the fictional. And I would say that, like a good haiku, Gable packs a lot into 140 characters. What's not said is evoked, asking the reader to co-create the experience by filling in the gaps. The reader is also the actor, turning prosody into tone of voice, actual or imagined, and adding affect to each line of this new manifestation of closet drama. In spite of the brevity of each line, the play itself is durational. It lasts for 8 weeks and requires constant engagement and re-engagement with the 4 characters every day. You can't go see it, have dinner, forget about it, and then get on with your life. It requires a kind of dedication that many plays don't ask for, while simultaneously asking for less of a commitment from us by taking advantage of the fact that many of us are on Twitter every day. So instead of the special commitment of going Friday at 8 o'clock to see a show and staying for 2 hours, it requires a kind of constant re-engagement over the course of 8 weeks. And when we get to a conversation about rasa, dramaturgical structure, durational performance, I would actually argue that because of the way readers or audience members are invited to engage, and because of the dramaturgical structure, that this play does invite rasa, or a rasic experience. In 2018, BuzzFeed hosted an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet that asked, how would this story unfold if these characters had Instagram and interacted with each other via Instagram? So it's an adaptation. Romeo and Juliet became a queer, multiracial, interactive love story played out through the photos, stories, videos, and DMs of hopeless.romeo, Mercury_yo, Juliet _by the book, Queen Tybalt, Senator Capulet, and Paris, not Perez. So this is Paris, this is Romeo, this is Juliet, and this is Rosalind. Adapting the play to Instagram was more than just a gimmick. The creators had something new to say about the characters, their relationships, the play, and our times, as well as the role of social media in creating and destroying alliances. So what they did was to create these friendships and alliances via Instagram, and then you followed the characters. And when I first heard about it, I was sure it was just going to be a terrible gimmick. But then I have to say, I was really engaged by the way the characters interacted and the way that they invited the story to develop. Smartphone plays, formerly known when we had iPods as pod plays, are an emerging genre of theater that take advantage of mobile technology to create site-specific, audio-based theatrical experiences. In most cases, the audience downloads an audio file onto a smartphone or other mobile listening device, proceeds to a particular location. This is important, that the difference between a radio play and a smartphone play is that smartphone plays are site-specific. So proceeds to a particular location and presses play. One of the defining characteristics of a smartphone play, in contradistinction to a radio play, a podcast, an audio tour, or a sound installation, is that the best ones take place in, make use of, and interact with the sites they inhabit. So the listener co-creates the experience by mixing the intimacy of the dialogue spoken right into their ear with the vastness of the site they inhabit. This genre is receiving more attention as the pieces are perfect for social distancing since they can be done alone. So for example, Janet Cardiff has a piece called Her Long Black Hair, which takes the listener through a private walk in New York's Central Park. And what you're seeing here on your screen are images of This Is Not a Theater Company's ferry play, in which the Staten Island ferry and the upper New York Bay become the set, and voices from the ferries past and present on the recording mix with live voices from other people on the ferry who become actual characters in the play, leaving audiences to consider their role in the live performance event that is the Big Apple. The dialogue encourages them to pay attention to every surrounding sight, smell, and sound, and those elements then play a substantial role in the experience. Counterintuitively, though it takes place on a smartphone, it actually invites you to put the smartphone away and focus on what's around you. Ferry play is a self-scheduled performance, so audiences can ride the ferry late at night, early in the morning, or any time in between. They choose the day and time, which then affects the experience they have. The play is vastly different at sunrise than in the middle of the day, and different during a morning or evening commute than on a Sunday morning because of who's on the ferry, the light, and the temperature. So in other words, the other thing is when you're in a proscenium theater, the temperature is sort of outside the frame of the production, right? If it's or if it's the middle of monsoon season, the rain is outside the frame of the production. In a site-specific play, it becomes part of the production, whether you like it or not. So ferry play has two acts. The first act takes place on the ferry ride from Manhattan to Staten Island. The second act takes place on the ride from Staten Island to Manhattan. So the other thing is you can experience Act 2 right after Act 1 or hours later, days later, months later, whatever you want. So the self-scheduled mode of theater has become more common during COVID, partly because everyone has a quarantine brain and their attention comes and goes at different times, but partly also because with the need to social distance, you can choose when the ferry is less busy. And so when you're able to maintain some form of social distancing. Subway Plays is a trilogy of smartphone plays for the New York City subway system for the N, L, and 7 lines. I'm going to play a little bit of this video intro, not all of it. So the slide is getting a little bit ahead of me, but I just want to say that each play tells stories connected to the subway line where they take place, which is why it will make no sense if you do the 7 train play on the L train, because those are very different groups of people and kinds of interactions. But the plays also invite the listener to engage with the world beyond the ride using their imagination and senses. Part history lesson, part urban travelogue, the plays are populated with New York archetypes, including lost tourists, annoyed locals, and idiosyncratic passengers. So I think the other thing about smartphone plays is that they blend the communal experience of being in a crowded theater and actually being on the subway with other people with the excitement of having a unique experience because it is being piped into your ears. And this is something else that pandemic plays attempt to create. There's a piece called Burying the Hatchet, a multi-day interactive group murder mystery on Facebook. And there's have been several pieces, one called The Other Side of the Line and one called The Telelibrary, in which you dial in through the phone to speak to an actor. So you have a live interaction with a performer, but over the phone where you can't catch COVID. I would say that communicating with everyone over Zoom has shifted perspectives such that artists from around the world are gathering in virtual spaces and playing to international audiences rather than working with and playing to people who can get to a particular piece of real estate. And I think this Zoom lecture, webinar, whatever we want to call this, get together is a prime example. I'm actually calling in from Buenos Aires. Some of you are in Mumbai, some of you are in West Bengal. Apparently there are one or two people from Turkey. So in a certain sense, if I were giving this lecture in New York, very few people currently online with us would be able to attend. But because it's on Zoom, we can actually join in with each other from around the world. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I was able to attend productions at the National Theatre in London, the Schaubühne in Berlin, the Comédie Française in Paris, and the Stanislavski Electro Theatre in Moscow. I also was able to attend lectures in Beijing and Kochi. And so while most of these were films of formerly live performances, and so I would argue then that raises the question about how much of this online performance is actually feels like theater, or does it feel more like film? And we can get to that later. But there were immediately playwrights who began to write site-specific plays for Zoom. And what is on your screen now is an image from What Do We Need to Talk About by Richard Nelson, which premiered at the Public Theater in New York in April. And the playwright Jenny Lynn Bader has written a piece called The Guru of Touch, which we're actually going to premiere in 2 weeks at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe online. So people have started working the idiosyncrasies of Zoom into their online pieces. Hang on, this is me having lost my, there we go. On April 3rd, this past April, This Is Not a Theater Company staged an online durational participatory adaptation of Charles Mee's Heaven on Earth. Titled Life on Earth, it invited participants around the world. We had performers and dancers from Argentina, India, Nepal, Turkey, China, the United States, and the West Bank. People sent in dances, poems, songs, and snippets of what life on Earth felt like to them during the pandemic. And these we organized according to the stage directions and dialogue in the original script. And so what was fascinating was that these artists showed us through their own artistic practices, their own cultural references, and in their own languages, what life during COVID felt like around the world. Audience members joined in and began to share their own poems, somebody sent in a recipe for carrot cake. Someone sent in a recipe for building a tent out of couch cushions and sheets, which was enormously fun. I then kind of built one in my living room. But it was interesting because it was truly experimental theater. We actually had no idea what was going to happen or how people would respond, what people would add to the experience. And to be honest, at that point, we actually only had a rudimentary idea of how Discord worked, which was the gaming platform that we used. So I'll just share. Oops. I'll share. No. Come on, Zoom. I will share. Here we go. So here we have, what is a dance like when it's in your living room during COVID and you don't have enough space to move around? But here is, I would argue, the dance of painful boredom during COVID.
Mama said there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this, my mama said. Mama said there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this, my mama said.
Okay, so moving on, this is a student of mine in Shanghai who again lost her performance platform. So here she is dancing around her living room. And dance costumes during COVID become sweatpants, sweatshirts. And for those of you who know Chandra Darshan, he actually joined us and read an excerpt of a piece by G. Shankara Pillai. This link that you see on screen is still live, so you can actually go and experience the performance. Sorry, I'm going to plug my mic back in. There we go. So you can, the performance will continue to play on Discord until Discord goes out of business. What was interesting was that creating this piece really required rethinking what theater is, where it can take place, who writes it, what it means to direct, and what live and participatory means. It also meant rethinking the role of the stage manager, who had to coordinate participants from numerous time zones around the world with a wide variety of Wi-Fi capability backstage via Zoom, WhatsApp, and text, so that the Discord was the sort of front stage area, and then there were all of these messages flying around the world backstage. I will also say that because because I was already tired of my computer screen by the end of March and suffering from headaches and things like that, my theater company decided to create a 25-minute site-specific, participatory, multisensory play in your bathtub. So again, we were thinking, well, where could you do a play in your own home? And I thought, what I need is a long, hot, relaxing bath with some nice scented something or other and a cup of herbal tea. So we ask you to gather a beverage of your choice, whether that's herbal tea or a glass of wine or whatever you want, to fill your tub with water and to get into the tub and just relax in the tub and then experience the piece. We created some dances for fingers across the surface of the water. We created some dances for toes in and around the bathtub. And there was some antiphonal singing so that it still is participatory. It still is live. It still is multisensory because you're smelling the herbal tea, or we actually ask you, if you don't have scented bath oil, to use coconut oil or olive oil, to boil some herbs in water and put those in the tub so that you're still having a multisensory experience, right? And so it is still interactive. So people relax in the tub, sip their beverage, which means they're tasting and smelling, smell the scents, you're feeling the warm water on your skin, you're listening to ASMR renditions of poetry, and you're doing your own dance of fingers across the surface of the water of the tub or the foot bath, whatever you happen to have, or shower. I had a student in Singapore who didn't have a tub, and so did it in the shower. So again, you can adapt. And I'll just give you a little bit. Wait, let me unplug my microphone. I'll give you a little bit of an excerpt of this.
I'll start and give you some time.
If your microphone is
you may
off,
respond in any way you wish.
feel free to sing along. Make this an interactive lecture. In the interest of time, I'll just move ahead. But one of the things that's fun about the bathroom is that the acoustics are always great. There's something about the tile, which is why people always sing in the shower when they can't sing anywhere else. So again, it invites you to invest in the live, even though it is a pre-recorded audio, right? So it invites you to sing along. And what is interesting, and I think is another aspect of online digital performance, is that Play in Your Bathtub has now been performed in over 30 countries. It was translated into Russian, and it's been presented by the Wow 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 Theater in Moscow. What you see on your screen is a screenshot of their opening night. This is Sonia, who has the most amazing bathroom I've ever seen. I want her bathroom. And it's actually it will open in a few days at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So it, again, because it is an audio piece and because you do it in your own bathroom, it is still site specific. It is still live. It is still multisensory, but it's also able to travel. We're also translating it into Spanish. So pretty soon we will be able to send around the Spanish version. So what's interesting about digital performance is that it's been unmoored from any specific piece of real estate that necessitates physical travel, allowing it to roam the world freely. So counterintuitively, the less travel there is, the more travel opportunities, right? The other thing that we did, which several people commented on, was that we actually had set performance times. Most of what's been happening online has just been sort of put up online and then you can see it at any time. But I thought it would be nice to maintain the ritual of sort of every evening at 7, there is a show to go to. And what was interesting was that a number of people who did Play in Your Bathtub emailed me to say that there was something comforting about knowing that other people were doing the same show at the same time in different bathtubs around the world, so that there was still, even though you were alone in your tub, there was still a sense of community knowing that it was happening. So again, the pandemic has allowed for international artists to come together without the complications of visas or the expenses of international travel and hotels, so that we could actually have, in our life on Earth, we could have someone from Shanghai, someone from New York, someone from the West Bank, someone from Istanbul, someone from Kochi, all performing together in the same space without having to track down all those visas. Huh. Now, what's also interesting is that while many organizations were going digital and international, Teatro Ciego in Buenos Aires went very, very local. They created a piece that they called Teatro en su casa, which means theater in your own house, or what I'm actually calling takeaway theater. So I ordered 2 tickets to the show, which came with, in my case, a vegetarian meal and an excellent Malbec. So the food was delivered to my door, and I opened these boxes to find a 3-course meal, dessert, wine, and water, along with a placemat, a napkin, and an eye mask, and these wonderful smelling herbs that you see. So there were instructions, and a candle. And there were instructions about how to sort of lay everything out on your table. And I arranged the meal according to the instructions. You see the numbers on the boxes 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the reason for that is they also sent an audio piece that coincided with each of the dishes, which to me really literalizes the notion of rasa, right? You're literally tasting food while you are listening to theater that goes with the food. So an audio theatrical piece that understands that it is going with literal tasting. So Teatro Ciego describes this as a gourmet experience and a game, but to me it's a new kind of sort of takeaway dinner theater. And it was delicious and lovely, and the audio experience was quite wonderful. And you can see up in the top right corner, this is what the living room looked like after the piece. So when there is a vaccine, I think some theaters will go back to business as usual. In the meantime, I would actually argue that new modes of theater have been invented. Some of them actually interesting enough to stay with us post-quarantine, because they retain aspects of liveness even on screen. And they challenge us to rethink what theater is. They're playing with time and duration, 8 weeks, 4 days, et cetera, with new dramaturgical structures and with new modes of engagement, as well as bringing international audiences and performers together. And what you see here is a platform, it's a little bit cut off, but this is a platform called Shindig, which I will be using for a show that my theater company is doing in October. What you see on the top are 4 slots for performers or for people from the audience who want to perform or are invited up to perform. On the bottom, you see the audience members live, and some of them you can see are individual, and some of them are in these groups of 6. And these groups of 6 then enable those audience members to actually talk to each other and have a private conversation while the performance is going on up at the top of the screen, if that makes sense. So, and you can invite anyone up onto the stage and then invite them to rejoin the audience. So I'm looking for ways in which we can become more interactive during performance. And so this is actually a platform that I'll be using in October. So that's all. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and open up to questions.
Yeah. So before, do we have questions already, Mustafa?
We have some of the questions, but I think we can start with, in this panel, and then we'll go to not question as such, but some queries and some requests from
I was wondering from your talk, because you've used all kinds of platforms, whether it's a smartphone and platforms like Discord, and you've spoken about platforms like this Discord, and now you are using Shindig. Now, some of these interfaces, because they are in between the medium itself, Twitter or whichever you are using, what role do these interfaces have in creating the performance itself? What shape does it give to the performance?
That's a great question. Because I would argue that each of these platforms is a theatrical site with its own set of modes of engagement and right. In other words, there are things that you post on Twitter that you post differently on Facebook, things that you put on Instagram that you don't put on Twitter. And so each of these sites has a set of either written or unwritten or spoken or unspoken rules, right? And so, for example, my students encountered I can't remember what it was, but it was early on, and it was an Instagram play that was an interesting experiment, but a failed experiment, I would argue. And my students said that one of the things that was not interesting about it was that they used Instagram as though it was Facebook. And Instagram you use differently. And so they said to us, to digital natives, right, to people who have grown up in these on these platforms, there is a distinct difference between what a character would post on Instagram and how they would post to what they would post on Twitter. And so I think you do have to choose the medium carefully, because as Marshall McLuhan famously said, the medium is the message, right? And it frames the message and it becomes part of what you're saying and how you're engaging. So a Zoom play is very different from a Facebook play. Because the medium is different.
Okay. This I feel, because a question in India also, there has been, I probably already know about these, there have been several attempts, or there have been quite successfully made online platform theaters, whether it's a Zoom play or many other platforms that have gone into the use of making these online plays. But I was wondering, and one debate that has stayed throughout is that what is essentially the difference between a film and this? What is that which makes it very, very distinct from, let's say, the film? Because if we take the platform as something which is a site, then Netflix is a site, YouTube is a site, even the cinema hall is a site, right? So how do we then distinguish between
and if Erin, you may allow me, my name is Atul Tiwari, if you may allow me to add to what Sarmishta has said, that we know that the genre of film theater has been a very old genre, starting from England, and we know that there have been very great directors like John Dexter who have been known for their film theater, the mastery over the film theater. So now, how will you distinguish between the two, as Sarmishta is asking?
This is a fantastic question, and a debate that I think everyone is having now, right? Because those of us who have devoted our lives to theater have chosen not to devote our lives to film because it's a different medium, right? So and so suddenly we're all on our screens. And so the question is, where does theater end and film begin, and vice versa? Because what is the difference? Again, as you say, what's the difference between watching a Netflix movie on my computer and theater on my computer? This is, to me, why I am trying always, and this is just me. So I loved seeing two governors from the National Theatre on my computer screen because I couldn't make it to London to see it live. I missed it when it came to Broadway in New York, and I thought, this is my opportunity. But I knew I was watching a film of a live theater piece and not a live theater piece. And so I engaged with it as such, right? So the question is, if we're all going to be social distancing, and if it's going to be another 6 to 9 to 12 months before we're able to, again, I'm not going into a theater until I am vaccinated, until those around me are vaccinated, right? But to me, the solutions have to do with multisensory and co-production with the audience, co-creation with the audience. So to me, I actually return to Abhinavagupta. I actually really think that the way to make the computer continue to be a site of live performance is for us to continue interacting with each other in the way that even though it's on my computer screen, there can be some engagement, that what you say makes a difference to what I do. And so your presence in this Zoom conversation, otherwise I could have just taped this lecture and emailed it to you, right? But the fact of your questions makes us have an engagement that's different from what it would have been if it were a film. So I would say I'm always searching for the interactive, which is why I'm also trying to move away from Zoom and into this platform called Shindig, which I think is more appropriate for theater because it allows for certain kinds of circulations. I would also say that this is also why I made Play in Your Bathtub site-specific to your tub, because it is an audio play, but as you see it asks you to sing, so it requires embodiment. It asks you to do the dance. We give you a prompt for the dance, but it's your fingers that have to make the dance. It's your toes that have to make the dance. It's your skin that feels the water. It's your nose that smells whatever scent you have chosen to bring into your bathroom with you, or your foot bath, or your bucket, or I understand I'm actually speaking to a group of people that probably most people don't have bathtubs in this group, but foot bath or bucket or whatever it is, right? And so again, to me, trying to use the audio as a way to get back to the tactile, the embodied experience is what I think, is what's important to me. Partly it's personal. I just get a headache after staring at my screen for more than a few hours. It just makes me actually literally kind of, so I would say those are two things. To me, again, this Teatro Ciego in Buenos Aires, just to kind of lead into another question and kind of connect it to something that Mangai said to me, is that they almost went literally into a rasic experience. So yes, they used the audio, but they delivered a meal that you ate in a particular way, and it was combined with the audio experience. So you were also getting the taste. You ate with your fingers. So it was sorry? Oh, okay.
Wait, someone? Okay, I think it was a mistake,
so that again, there's a liveness to that. Even though you're alone, or I did it with my husband, so there were, only two of us as opposed to 50 of us in the same room.
Right.
So I'm looking for those kinds of experiences. And to me, those are rasic experiences. Again, I would argue that that at least in Abhinavagupta's gloss on rasa, right? Rasa is an exchange between the performer or the performance and the audience member, and that these performances that are online, the ones that require exchanges, still have the potential to be rasic. Ones that require a multisensory experience still have the potential to be rasic. Performances that have dramaturgical structures that allow for elaboration, or nirvahanam, right? To use the Kuriatam, right? That, in other words, again, a play by Bhasa, which in its English language translation is 8 pages long, but that's not what you perform over the course of the 41 nights of Kuriatam. you perform, right? The Chakyar takes a single line of text and elaborates on it for an hour, right? Uses their Nirvahanam. So that kind of dramaturgical structure that allows for elaboration, for commentary, for it, as and when that is present in a dramaturgical structure, in a Twitter play or in a, right? I think you get back to some of the liveness of it. I think a film and proscenium theater to me are kind of capitalist in that it's like you show up and you sort of say like, okay, show me your performance. I'm ready. I'll just sit here. But as we know, Abhinavagupta is like, well, you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared to engage. You have to be ready to co-create with the performance. And so as and when a theater performance can do that on screen, I think there's still a theatrical aspect to it.
Erin,
and the potential for us.
If you may allow me, number one,
Yes.
I'm so happy to be engaging with you today because I was a student of Kavalam Narayan Panikar way back in 1980 to 83. I've also worked with G. Shankar Pillai in Cochin in the university where he started the theatre department in Ranadakara. And of course, like when you were talking about 8 weeks of performances today, then I was also thinking of the Kodiyattam experiences which go into 41 nights. So I'm very happy that you have written the book which an Indian should have written about the theatre of roots. So I'm very privileged to be sitting with you.
Thank you.
But I have some fundamental differences which if you allow me to. If you call it a digital performance, I have no problems. But the moment the word theatre comes in, as you yourself are saying, that does it matter to you and me what perfume the actor was wearing today when you talk about those sensory things? Because the audience is not able to kind of smell that audience, and we are in the two spaces. And I may be, with my gray hairs, an old world person, but for me, the basic definition of theater is when an actor and the audience are in the same space. Rest of it all is the narratology of theater. Can be film theater, can be screen theater, whatever you may call it. And it's not very great thing that after all, the corporate people and the world leaders have always been meeting on the platforms like what we artists have started interacting today because of COVID. It's not nothing new. IIT guys have been doing it since 1991. So in College Station, when I was in America for some time, we used to do it then also, this kind of a thing. So the thing is that if you call it a digital performance, I have no problem. The moment the word theater comes in, so to me, the question is that why are we so desperate? Maybe because of the corona, there will be no theater for 6 months. There have been ages in Europe, there have been ages in India, which were called the dark ages, and there was no theater, at least in many parts of the country, only in the folk theaters. So maybe there'll be no theater. But how does it matter? The thing is, the theater will live. My question.
I have about 10 responses to that. So let me work my way through the first 3 and then we can.
Great.
First of all, thank you. And second of all, it is an honor to be on a Zoom call with someone who worked with G. Shankara Pillai, who I never had the privilege to.
He died much long ago. Yes.
Yeah. And I will also say that really everything I think that I know that's worthwhile knowing, I have learned from Kavalam Narayana Panikar. So I'm to get to I in a certain sense, I think I expand on your definition a little bit of 2 people in a room. To me, we are 2 people now in a room having an exchange. And so I'm not necessarily bothered by the fact that it's on screen. Certainly some things, I am, but certainly some things can continue to be live. Yes. But I would say that our interaction is fundamentally different than the way that I watch a film, which is I can't, it won't talk back to me. I can't ask it a question. I can't disagree with it or agree with it, or it doesn't care whether I'm there or not. Whereas a live performer cares, right? Because you're getting something back from an audience. And so to me, this is why I'm always, even in these online spaces, trying to figure out how to, now, so I want to talk about perfume and I want to talk about theater. So, but let me take on theater first. One of the things that I feel, to me, the term theater is political, right? And partly what happened, I think, in the history of Indian theater is because, forgive me for putting it this way, or don't forgive, I'm putting it this way, is that the British arrived with a particular colonial definition of theater, which is that it was playwright initiated, text-based, plot-driven, et cetera, right? And that the job of every one of the actors, of the director as the role of the director emerged, et cetera, was to support the work of the playwright, right? And so then what happened is there were all these books that came out in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and they were all called Indian theater. There's actually a stack of books with exactly the same title. And what they did was chart Sanskrit drama, and then the arrival of British drama, and then Indian plays that were written sort of inspired by Shakespeare or in response, right? So it then begins to look as though there was no theater in India from for thousands of years. I think because of that, I think the term theater is political. I think you can call Nautanki theater. I call Kuriatam theater.
It is.
Jatra is theater, right?
Of course.
So the fact that Nautanki might have 30 musical numbers and take place over the course of several days, or the fact that Kuriatam, in fact, your responsibility is not... I was raised as a director in the United States, and I was told to be faithful to the play, which, first of all, that is such gendered, sexualized language. What do you mean I wouldn't be faithful to the play? I'm having an affair behind the play's back. Ooh, don't tell the play. So it's very gendered, right? This notion. But in Kuriatam, I remember one time I was in rehearsal with Panikkar and his company, Sopanam, and he looked at me and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm telling the story." He said, "Well, why would you do that?" Right? So the whole purpose, your responsibility as an artist in Kuriatam, in Kathakali, in these genres, is to respond to, comment on the text. The Vidushika's job is to link the text to what's going on in the real world, right? And so I think that we need to expand our definition of theater. And perhaps the challenge of COVID is to expand our definition of theater not only to include Nautanki, Jatra, Kuriatam, Chow, Terakuta, but to now include some of these things that are happening online. Now, I will say that because some of these online Zoom performances are new and people are experimenting, that some of them are better than others, right? Some experiments are going better than others. Some of the Zoom plays I've seen have been painful, and some have been fascinating.
That's actually true for everything, right? That's true for
exactly
proscenium theater or film or anything.
Sure, we've all seen some painful proscenium theatrical productions, have we not? Yeah, shh, don't tell. But I think that people are still figuring out how to do this new kind of work. I hesitate to not call it theater, to call it performance, because I'm trying to expand the definition of theater. Now, to get to the question of perfume. So when I go to a Kathakali or Kuriatam performance, again, usually there is incense, there is, right? Often there's prasadam, there's, right? So you get all kinds of different aspects that I would say maybe technically are not part of the play, but they are part of the experience of seeing the production, right? Sure. And so they absolutely, the incense does affect, well, I'm hugely influenced by scent. So it hugely affects my mood. If I want to be in a good mood, I put perfume on. If somebody burns something, it actually can make me feel, I have a physiological response, right? So to me, I think theater that, some of these online theaters, you might be smelling a different perfume than I am. But if we set up a framework where what we smell can be part of the play, then we are again sort of going further away from our screens and back into an embodied space, where then the audio or the video is one piece of the experience that we're having. Does that make sense? Which is why with Play in Your Bathtub, I asked people to get a cup of herbal tea, because there will be a smell and a taste, and they will feel the heat of the cup, and that will affect their experience of the play. And if I've asked them to find their own props, it actually makes it cheaper and easier for me as a producer. I don't have to gather the props for all the performers. I can just say, bring your own props to the show. But what that does is it makes you aware that that smell, that taste, that the heat of the cup is part of the performance. And so even when it's on audio or even when it's on Zoom, I've asked you to bring your body to the play. And so I guess in that sense, I'm fighting the flat computer screen, but I'm hoping then that makes it feel more like two bodies in the same space. Does that, what would be your response to that?
Well, I have also been struggling with this question, and also the question of how can theater teaching be done during the times of COVID. Now that's very interesting, because theater is a contact sport. Theater is a contact sport. You can, if you have to learn football, it's very difficult to learn it online. You can learn about your dribbling skills and other skills and how to shoot a goal. But because football is a contact sport, theater is a contact sport, not only between the actors, but also between the audience. So it's very difficult or almost impossible for you to be able to learn a contact sport without a contact, unless until you have some kind of a dummies to do with. And one day I was having a similar seminar on the theater education, on the theater pedagogy in the times of COVID. And ultimately, when I was not able to drive my point, sometimes one has to become a little body, and pardon my saying so. And the example which I gave them, I'm not giving it to the good guys here on this platform.
And I can feel, I'm sensing what's about to.
The thing is that the thing is that if the film theater is something like pornography, as far as sex is concerned, the telephone sex is very, very interactive. You have also the Zoom sex platforms, where somebody is in a certain space, I am in a certain space, and we can titillate each other through the way we want, just through the screen. But it'll never replace the experience of real sex, which is a contact sport.
I absolutely agree. And I think I'm not hoping that online theater will replace live theater. I think what but I've spoken to a number of people who say to me, oh, I can't wait till we go back to normal. And I'm not sure that there is a going back to where we were before, ever. I think we will be able to be live in the same spaces again, but I think our society will have been changed by this, right? And so we're going to have to figure out what the new normal is. And so I guess I never in a million years would think that it's new to me, the idea of Zoom sex. I'm going to have to take a moment to process that. But that replaces...
It's very much like the telephone sex, only with more visuals. Telephone sex is also
There's a film called Her. Have you heard? Has anyone watched the film Her?
No, I
I
have
think
not
it's
watched
a
the film.
film.
Yes,
It's on Netflix, and
I've
it
heard
talks
about it.
about the same concept where there's this person who there's no person, it's an idea, and you basically digitally have this conversation. I think Joaquin Phoenix was the
Yes, yes,
actor in
yes.
it.
I've heard it.
So what I see this turn out to be is something which is an entity of itself. I mean, I don't
Yes.
know why we have to be substitution of one another,
That's
but
what. That's what.
yeah,
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
I mean, we have to right now because all the theaters are closed.
right,
But what I'm interested in is what happens when the theaters reopen and some of this still continues. And all we
Sure,
have is
sure,
kind of a new genre that has
sure.
joined in with all the other genres,
right,
right?
right,
And
right,
so it's one of many kinds of theater we can attend.
It's,
I
right,
will
it's like
also
it's
say
like the infusion of a lot of video stuff in our theaters today.
right,
Huge
exactly.
amount of
right,
video has crept into
right,
our theater today.
right,
Right.
right.
And if you're Anuradha Kapoor and you're doing your adaptation of Antigone, you're using that medium beautifully, that film
Yeah,
and live theater
yeah, yeah.
beautifully. That was a stunning production.
Or I
Other
just
people
saw
are not.
Arundhati. I just fleetingly saw her on the screen. Arundhati
Yeah,
Nath
I
from
saw,
Bangalore,
yes.
and
I
her
think she's
whole
there. Yeah.
Girish Karnad's the play, the whole Broken
Yes,
Images, again was a very
exactly.
important play which Arundhati brought to us.
Yes, yes, which was again a beautiful use of
Yes,
the sort of live and the camera and the et cetera, et cetera. Stunning production, which I actually saw at the Rangashankara.
yes.
Um, but so I'm not thinking that one is better or worse or instead of, or I think I'm just thinking in addition to additional streams that all begin. And I
Right.
will also say that for some people, uh, you know, um, some in New York, I would argue that the ticket prices are very, very expensive. Again, this capitalist model of theater making, which I think is killing theater. So I'm hoping there will be some things that we will reinvent when we go back live. But to do a pod play on the Staten Island Ferry, which is free, to be able to download an audio play and experience it for $1 or whatever. You don't have to dress up. You don't have to go somewhere fancy. You can do it, if you work all day or all night or whatever, you can do it whenever you want. I think allows theater to open up to some other people who might not be able to do it. And that might be true of some of these online theater experiences as well. Now, of course, you have to be able to afford the computer to have the online theater experience. So in that sense, it's very classist, right? But once you own the computer, then some of the other things become more available.
Yeah. Can we maybe now take a few questions from Facebook? Mustafa, can you help us with that?
I'm not hearing Mustafa.
No, I mean, he hasn't spoken yet, yeah.
Okay.
Now, are you speaking now? We can't hear you, Mustafa. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
So there were several instances that like people want to ask about those, and so first question is, could you write the name of the Romeo and Juliet reference that you talked about?
Yes. So it's BuzzFeed. Let me see. How do I get this to you? If you go on, if you just Google BuzzFeed Romeo and Juliet Instagram, you'll get all the information. And the play is obviously still up on Instagram, so you can still chart through. You just have to follow all the characters on Instagram, and it's still there. The Twitter play is also still up on Twitter. So if you Google Jeremy Gable, Gable, the 15th line, and then you'll find the characters. There's Angela Giannini, Dustin Kinder, Patrick Hearson, and I forget the fourth character's name.
Mustafa,
it's
maybe
all up
you
there.
can,
You can still follow.
type it down in the chat for people to see those names. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
What is the connection between Abhinav Gupta and social media interaction?
Ah, yes. The connection in my mind is that I think where I would propose, or let me audition this thought and see if anyone casts it. That, and Dr. Tiwari, let me know what you think of this, that I think it is still possible to have a Russic experience, to have Rasa occur in some of these online theatrical experiences. I would initially, my instinct would tell me, no, it's not possible. But the more that I think about it, the more I think it is possible. And that one of the things that makes it possible in certain kinds of online performances, for example, the Discord play that I talked to you about, that there is a way in which the audience has to prepare, has to co-create, so the Natya Shastra, which for a moment I will attribute to Bharata just to make it easier, but we all know that, right? Yeah. Bharata does locates rasa sort of in the character and on stage, yeah? And Abhinavagupta, but leaves the possibility open that it is in the audience. And of course, Abhinavagupta talks about rasa occurring in the intermixing, right, of the performer performance and the response of the audience member, right? That you can't have rasa outside of this exchange, right? It is only in the exchange. And that as and when there is actual exchange in these online theatrical productions, my argument would be that rasa can occur. We also all know that it doesn't always occur, right? But to me, what is interesting too is that Abhinavagupta, again, long before capitalism, but presents a kind of anti-capitalist notion of theater. The theorist Jacques Rancière talks about the politics of the proscenium stage, which is the directors, the actors, the playwright are all up here, and they tell the audience what to think, right? That it's like, here, we've thought about this a lot. Here's what we think. Here's what you should think, right? And that the politics of a more interactive kind of theater are different. Does that make sense? Yep. That there is a loop that's happening where the participants are co-creating, or I would argue the partakers, right? If we're using taste as the metaphor, the partaker is co-creating the experience, and I think that's still possible online. Mungai, if you're familiar with the work of theater director Mungai, yes. She and I were speaking the other day about Darshan, and can Darshan happen in an online forum? And if you think of going to receive Darshan, right, and the eye contact, we know that many people receive Darshan through postcards, posters, images, right, as well as, and so I guess as long as you're making eye contact, right, with the deity through the screen, I'm not sure that it can't happen. I'm not saying it's not more difficult, or do you know, but I guess I think that some of these things that I would initially think would not be possible in an online computerized forum, yeah, I think are more possible than we would otherwise think. Yeah. So that's my link to Abhinavagupta.
If I may add that Darshan is something which was also available to a blind poet in India called Surdas, or a blind poet called Milton, when he could see his paradise, find it and lose it. But the thing is, Darshan is something which is available to even a blind person, because Darshan is being one with the other through different kind of experiences as well. You don't just need these two eyes. There are other senses which are more sharpened in both Milton and Surdas.
Yes. And again, speaking of the other senses, if you want to go back to Teatro Ciego's piece, which is about eating aspects of the production, then you are taking rasa very literally. Right? Taste becomes not a metaphor, but an actual thing that is happening as a conscious part of a construction of the performance.
Yeah. So I have one related question, and then maybe we can go back to the every other questions that we might have. So you spoke about Natya Shastra, and Natya Shastra also goes on to talk about performances as Drishya Kavya. Okay, so
Yes.
if I can
Visual
closely,
poetry.
Yes. So what about the visuality of online performances? So we know, for example, right now, if I were in one space with you, this fact that, I have lights put in a certain way, that I am restricted within a certain view, that, what is around me, nobody really knows. And my atmosphere is defined pretty much by the frame I'm in. Sometimes it can be because you also spoke about the body and the question of experience. The body can feel restricted within this sort of a given frame, right? So how would you think about this?
Let's break the frame. So let's why don't we oops, I just dropped my microphone on the floor. That's why many people don't break the frame. But in other words, in other words, I also think that I'm working on a Zoom play right now, and we're beginning to talk about entrances and exits. And, I can enter from all sides, or I can, or I can be that character who doesn't quite know how to use Zoom and I'm a little too close. Or I can be the person who's very far away and then you can't hear me also because I dropped my microphone on the floor. Sorry, let me get that back. I think that for the purposes of this conversation, we've accepted this very square box. But for example, let me see if there's a way. Okay, I have a question. Could we do something where, could everybody turn off their video except for you and I, and then we hide non-video participants, and then let's see, do you have a cup, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to, let's see, you are on my right. Am I on your right on your screen?
You are on on my right. Okay. Actually, at the center, but yeah.
Okay, so so if we do the view, we do gallery view. Oh, now you're above me. Okay, if I take your cup out of the frame. All right. I take a sip. Now I'm going to pass my cup up to you. Now take your cup from where my cup disappeared.
Okay. Oops.
Right, something, and I'll get my cup out of the frame. Yeah. So in other words, if we had the same cup, we could make the illusion of it looking like I'm passing you my cup. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, you can come back now. But in other words, that's where I saw some fight choreography that was done in this production where they did some stuff with just tossing a pillow around. And so one actor tossed the pillow at the screen, and then the next actor went, and caught, and it was a different pillow, obviously, but you could kind of play around with it. So I think there are ways of choreographing with Zoom. I don't think we have to be in this frame. Yeah.
So you're saying basically visuality doesn't necessarily restrict the body in any way with the online space.
I think we can find ways around it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I think we can take one or two more questions and then maybe close. Yeah. Mustafa, we can't hear you. Your
Mustafa,
mic is muted.
Sorry. Yeah, there are several more questions over here, but we can address two or three. One of the question was, we have had a lot of time given to create the vocabulary of a medium. Like for example, Proscenium has its own vocabulary like upstage, downstage, wings, and pit, and so on, which plays a part in making of theater, right? So when will such a vocabulary emerge in online platforms? Would it take time to do this, or is it already there?
Well, I I think some of it's already there. I'm not sure how much the vocabulary matters. I mean, yes, we know downstage, upstage, stage right, stage left, but I mean, you can still create a production with different vocabulary. You can just say, okay, everybody, let's all go over there. You don't have to say, okay, everybody, let's all go down left. So sure, uh, yeah.
Like they gave example like window. It could be window, connection, gallery view, focus, and so on. Like limitations
Yeah.
such as distortion and lag.
I mean, the vocabulary is a tool to communicate. It's not necessary. I mean, in other words, however you choose to communicate, if you get your point across, it doesn't matter, right? So yeah, down left, down right, upstage, center stage. That's vocabulary that we use in rehearsal. I actually don't use that vocabulary because I don't direct on a proscenium stage. So I can't remember the last time I said something about down right. I said, over by the engine of the ferry, or I did a production in a pool. I said, over by that ladder over there, or the diving board is over there, or, et cetera, right? So the vocabulary is there to support the need of making the theater. It's not important in and of itself.
Any other question, Mustafa? I think Mustafa is kind of frozen. Shubhankar, if you can help us with questions. You're muted.
Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one question is like how a Indian moves from our perception of theater as a community, more so as an annual ritual involving everyone from a village to the 60-minute auditorium performance that have been more urban centric. Is this the new perspective on the new narrative that the theater is taking? Reaching to the digital audiences with those who can afford to watch, considering the challenges of network and smartphones and other urban and class-centered privileges. So that is.
They are absolutely class-centered, right? I mean, in other words, we're talking about online theater in situations where people have computers, have smartphones, have Wi-Fi capability. I think we just saw that Mustafa lost his Wi-Fi capability for a moment. So even those of us with enormous privilege sometimes lose our Wi-Fi capability. We had an electrical outage where I was in Buenos Aires, and I couldn't communicate with anybody for a full 30 hours because I had no way of communicating. So, and I'm extraordinarily privileged. So yes, I think that's a huge issue. And so it is, yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily an urban-rural issue, since I think there are some parts of some cities and some people within cities without good Wi-Fi and without computers, and some people in rural areas where there is Wi-Fi because someone has set it up, or, so I don't know. I don't know that exactly breaks down into urban and rural the way that urban and rural was a clearer kind of category back in the 30s and 40s. Shubhankar, what I missed some of the other part of the question. I feel as though I'm not actually answering the question that's being asked.
Okay. Yeah, I think there are 2-3. I mean, attached question with that. So the question goes like that, like how we Indians move from our perception of the theater as a community, more so as an annual ritual involving everyone from a village to the 60-minute auditorium performances that have been more urban-centric. Is this the new perspective on the new narrative of the theater is taking, reaching to the digital audiences with those who can afford to watch, considering the challenges of the urban and the class others privileges? So I guess you in a way answered the question.
Well, this is interesting though in terms of community and the definition of community. I think that again, in the past, a community was somebody who was a group of people who lived close to you, right? And again, before airplanes, before all that kind of stuff. Your community were people that you saw IRL in real life every day. I think it's possible to create a community online. I'm sensing that those of us who are here now are all part of a community of theater goers, theater makers, theater scholars, right? That's a kind of community. We are joining together online. I imagine one of the reasons for creating this Zoom lecture was to create a sense of community or foster a sense of community, since we can't be together in person. And so while I think it functions slightly differently, and I am longing for the time that I can get back into a room with another actual person, it is a kind of community. So I think that expanding our definitions of these terms is sort of useful in this time too. And again, I'm not saying that this Zoom room is better or worse than a proscenium theater. I'm just saying it's also a community. So I'm not hanging good, bad, better, best, things like that.
Yeah. So
I think we'll take in the last question, Shubhankar. It's already 7:30.
Yeah.
All right. There was a question regarding the discussion that you and Atul sir had about there's someone who says that they have been involved in online.
Can you tell us the name also of the person who had asked the question? That might help. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'll have to look that up because I'm maintaining an.
Oh, then
yeah.
Yeah, in the benefit of time, I think then we can skip it. Yeah.
Well, Stephen's trying to do four things at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The person is saying is that he or she has been involved in online kissebazi hashtag theater performances, and had to use a virtual background or place lights accordingly and look straight into the camera to make it closer to theatrical experience for their audiences. And they further responded to the comments on the scroll and urged the audience to unmute their microphones and give an audio response. So to their surprise, a lot of audience members came back saying that it was intimate and they didn't feel they missed the theater during the performances. They have added that they're a little old school, like Atul sir previously mentioned about theater, and because they think that screen takes away the dimensionality and makes it two-dimension, the performance. So what do you have to say about the audience response of feeling intimacy?
That it's different. Again, I sympathize with this person who misses live performance where we're all sitting in a room together. I feel that the proscenium is very two-dimensional. So that's I don't enjoy a lot of proscenium theater.
Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you.
Yeah. So to me, we've already been, or I personally have been fighting what I consider to be two-dimensional theater for a long time. I'm forced to embrace the two dimensions of my computer screen if I want to communicate with anybody in the past 4 months, 5 months, and in the upcoming, until there's a vaccine. This is how we're communicating with each other. I'm not saying it's better, it's worse, it's this, it's that, it's what it is right now, so I think that it does give us opportunities for creativity. And also to the performer, yes, I think the interesting thing is everyone is now their own set designer, everyone is now their own lighting designer, everyone is now their own costume designer, everyone is now their own sound designer. This is, I went out and bought a mic. My computer isn't able to do those Zoom backgrounds, so I have but if I were in a play, I'd have to figure out the background, and I'd have to do my own makeup, and I'd have to get my own lighting to work, and all of this kind of stuff. I've set up a little sound booth for myself. I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a couple of canvases, and I've draped a sweater over it so that the sound doesn't bounce around the apartment. So we're all having to I've never had to create my own sound booth at my own dining room table before. So we're all having to do these kinds of things, I think. Yeah.
So Atul sir, what are your views on this particular thing?
Well, this particular person whom we are not naming has put a very interesting question of Dastan Goi. What he or she is saying about Qissa Goi is the Dastan Goi. Such kind of narrative theatre forms, whether it's Dastan Goi, whether it is Katha Vachan, even Pandwani. The thing is, Erin will tell you that in all the plays there is a balance of Angika and Vachika and Satvika, etc., 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 and Aharya. So we know that in such performances, which are the sit-down theatre performances, where the actor hardly gets up, even if he emotes and moves his hands and legs and neck a little bit, he is not going to kind of travel in the space. They are more based on the Vachika, or more based on the storytelling. That's why it's called Dastan Goi, not the performance of the Dastan. It's not the theater of the storytelling, but the Dastan Goi. The word Goi in Urdu means speaking a story. So when you are more dependent on the Vachika, of course, your loss of theatre-ness through this medium, through this digital medium, will be lesser. So your story is communicated more than a kind of a more wholesome, fulsome theatre. But even he or she will know that the fun of being in the same space with the people, when people are saying wah wah, and they are not told to clap, because tali pitna is supposed to be a bad word, is supposed to be hooting the actor. So that kind of an experience is a different experience when you listen to the breadth of the audience. When some single person in the audience sighs, you understand that the kind of impetus that being together gives to an actor in the theater.
And if I may add to that,
please,
the performers feel that. I mean, any performer can tell you, we all talk about good audiences and bad audiences and good performances and bad performances. Right. They are intertwined. In other words, if you have a sort of dead audience, the performers will feel it and it will deaden the performance. Obviously, as a director, I'm always trying to say, well, but it's our responsibility to kind of, keep it going. And but again, these things, these interactions affect the performance.
Right. Okay, on that note, I think we'll end this session. Somewhere I felt that we are almost on the verge of mourning this loss of the shared space. I'm hoping that will happen very soon. But what came out of this discussion is clearly that the online theater space is developing in its own to be a form. And I think many of us are embracing it. Erin clearly is embracing it quite well. So on that note, I think we'll close this session. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Atulji. I can see Arundhati.
Thank you, Sharmishta.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, my email is erinmee1@gmail.com. And so if anyone wants to follow up, I'm happy to email back and forth. And those of you who have been part of online performances in India, I would love it if you would email me the information, because I would love to experience those. So, but thank you so much. This was a fascinating discussion.
Just give a sort of conclusion from the club's end, we are really thankful to Erin ma'am for joining us. And it's have been, a long session to some extent, without exhaustive, but very interesting, interactive with three of you. Definitely thank you, Atul sir, for joining us with and have this conversation. And Sharmishta, definitely all the time, whenever we look for Sharmishta, Sharmishta readily agreed to do whatever for the dramatic.
Thank you guys for organizing this.
And also I like to use this opportunity to thank all the club conveners and definitely the audience watching there and so many people. So thank you all. Thank you so much. And also sorry in that sense for some technical glitches in between. I lost some of the movement. So with that note, thank you all. Stay safe, everybody, and stay home. That is right now the situation for everyone. Hope this will recover soon. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.